guess what it's time for, Brian? It's time to see the top 5 of your list, 5 through 1, starting at 5, working our way up. Again, now is the time where we're going to see some similar names on both lists, but they're going to be in a bit of a different order. And so that's what makes this is intriguing, to say the least. So I will say, and I don't want to, that there's the number 5 spot is actually the same for both of you guys.
Yes.
So let's see it, Brian.
And what I was thinking too, Travis, if you want to just also comment on this next guy, Sam Levitt, we can kind of just knock that one out. And then when it's your turn, you can just kind of cruise past that one. But I have Sam Levitt number 5 on my list, and he's a guy that I've had a tough time with this offseason as far as the push, because I watched him several times last year, and I want to push back on some of the hype he's getting. And I've seen somebody say he might be the best quarterback in the country and he's a top 2-3 guy. And I'm like, hold on a second, let's pump the brakes on that. And the production was good last year, but it wasn't like elite. It wasn't special. But, and I kind of had some pushback against, Lenore Sellers for the same reason. But then you got to remember, this kid was a redshirt freshman last year. And he threw 23 passes the year before. He went 15 of 23 at Michigan State, comes to Arizona State, wins the starting quarterback job, is okay the first couple games. I don't really care about what he did against Wyoming. Had some struggles against Mississippi State. Had some up and down moments against Texas State. Didn't play that great. Had good numbers against Texas Tech, but had some big mistakes that proved costly. The Kansas game, he throws 4 touchdowns, doesn't put up a lot of yards. He gets hurt against Utah. When he came back from that injury, he was a different kid the rest of the year. He went for his first game back. He went for 304 and 3 touchdowns against Oklahoma State. Went for 161 and 3 touchdowns, no picks, and a win over UCF. 275, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and a win over Kansas State on the road, which I believe at the time K-State was ranked in the top 25 when they beat them in that game. Next week he goes for 247, 1 touchdown and a pick on only 25 attempts, so 9.9 yards per attempt, and also did a nice job of avoiding pressures in that game against BYU, and a win over a ranked BYU team, which vaulted them. Goes against Arizona. They just light up Arizona, 291 yards on 22 pass attempts. And then he throws for 219 yards on only 17 pass attempts against Iowa State, rushes for 33 yards and a touchdown, and then did not play well against Texas. Had some impressive plays against Texas. Like, his highlight reel against Texas is really impressive. But when you watch every play, you're like, kid, that's a lot to learn. But you know what that late season meant for me, guys? They went into November, I think, Trevor, you've said this, with the 7th best odds of playing in the Big 12 title game.
Yep.
That's the pressure this kid faced coming out of the game he missed with an injury, and he played his best football down the stretch. In the last 6 games of the season, and I'm before the playoffs, so 5 regular season games and then the Big 12 title game, this kid threw 16 touchdowns and had 1 pick. With the season and if we want to have any chance of winning the Big 12 title, we got to run the table. And during that stretch, this kid threw 16 touchdowns and had 1 pick, and he also rushed for a touchdown. 17 touchdowns and 1 pick in the last 6 games of the regular season, or 5 games of regular season, plus the Big 12 title game. And he battled against Texas. He just was playing a pretty darn good pass defense in that game. And he played a role in helping them bring back. So the more I study Sam Levitt and get over my desire to push back on the national narrative, and just dive into the film and say, that was a redshirt freshman in year 1 at a college because he had transferred from Michigan State. That's a pretty darn good season for a team that went 3-9 the year before. And then they
started off horribly. Like, their season started off very bad.
Well, yeah, because the loss to Texas Tech, right? And so, but when I look at Arizona State too, guys, is the thing you got to think about. And I'm pretty sure that Jordan Travis did not play in the Big 12 title game either.
He didn't. I looked it up.
He was a 1,000-yard receiver, and he was coming off of the last 6 games that Jordan Travis played in before he got hurt. 108 catches, or 108 yards, 81 yards, 99 yards, 176 yards, 125 yards, 143 yards. Then they go in the Big 12 title game without him, and Sam Levitt does the exact same thing he'd been doing with him. That said a lot to me. And so that's why I got Sam Levitt number 5 on my list, Trev. I I would not have had him number 5. If we would have just done this off a kind of gut feel and just watching some games and the hype, I don't know that I would have had him in my top 10. But the more I dove into the film, you think about him being a redshirt freshman, you look at some of the circumstances, what was on the line in some of those games, he vaulted way up my list for me.
I couldn't agree more. I echo everything that you just said. Look, when we start talking about quarterbacks being good at the college level, Bryan, you mentioned that this isn't an NFL draft projection list. Some of the best quarterbacks in college are just gamers, man. When they can just kind of look at what's ahead of them on the schedule, just be like, all right, giddy up. It's time to go. And that's Sam Leavitt to me. I mean, he's the starting quarterback of a team that was projected by his own conference to finish last in the Big 12 before the start of the 2024 season. And his performance helped spark essentially their run to all the numbers that you pointed out. I think he gets overshadowed a little bit because of the success and what the story of Cam Skattebo last year was, and Skattebo's performance to help kind of bring Arizona State back in that game against Texas. But what would have Sam Leavitt's numbers would have looked like if they had Jordan Tyson in that game? Without Jordan Tyson, they absolutely handled Iowa State in the conference championship game, a game that their own conference said that they had no business being in. I echo a lot of the same things that you say about Sam Leavitt. He was number 5 on my list as well.
They also won the only game he didn't play in that Cam Skattebo didn't play in last year. They beat UCF in a game where Cam Skattebo didn't play. And then Cam Skattebo didn't play. They shut Cam Skattebo down. Kansas State shut him down because their whole game plan was, we're going to make your quarterback beat us. And Cam Skattebo had, I think it was like 73 yards on 22 carries. They're like, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with Sam Leavitt. Sam Leavitt was like, word.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I will.
Mm-hmm.
And they went out and won that game on the road. So that's why he's on my list. Number 4 on my list, guys, is Drew Aller. A very polarizing player. There's people in this chat, I promise you, wouldn't have him in the top 10. There's other people that have him number 1. I think Drew Aller's number 4. And in my view, this is his ceiling. This is his ceiling. And when I look at Drew Aller, I see a guy that is a flawed quarterback. There's no question about it. And the thing that I don't know that Drew Aller's ever going to be that guy that can kind of necessarily put a team on his shoulders against the best teams they play. But he's a guy that's been a consistent player for most of his career. And he's been a 2-year starter. The last 2 seasons, this is a kid that's thrown 49 touchdowns and has only thrown 10 interceptions. That can't be ignored. He's a kid that at times last year was willing to say, hey, look, things aren't going great. We're down against USC. I got to step up. I got to put the team on my shoulders for a little bit. And he did that. And he played very poorly in the first half and then came out in the second half with them down 20-6 and lit USC on fire with the way that he played. And I also thought he battled his butt off against Oregon and made some big-time throws. The thing for him is he's just going to have to be consistent. And a lot of people bang on him for how he played against Notre Dame. And I want to remind people that there has not been a better pass defense in college football the last 2 years. And there's been a lot of quarterbacks like C.J. Stroud, like Caleb Williams. Drew Aller played a whole lot better against Notre Dame last year than Caleb Williams played against Notre Dame the year before. So I just think people kind of bang on him a little bit too much and are too critical of him. This is a kid that had a 153.47 quarterback rating last year and whose team went to the national semifinals and who was throwing Tyler Warren all those passes. So I just think he gets a bad rap. But I also think this is as high as I could go with him. And my prediction would be is if I'm wrong on him being 4, I'm going to be wrong in that he should be lower, then he'll be higher. Because I just think there's some limitations to him from a processing reads standpoint. And the fact that he has a very long throwing motion, he's never, in my opinion, going to be a guy that's completing like 70% of his passes while throwing downfield against a Notre Dame, against a Texas, against Ohio State. He may do that on the season, but it's because he'll kind of tear up the teams that are a little bit less. So I just think that there's I'm in the middle ground on Drew Aller. I'm not potential number 1 overall pick hype like we were hearing last year, which I think is freaking nuts. And I'm also not one of those he sucks people. I think he's a good college quarterback. That is a top 10 college quarterback. If I'm wrong on him, though, I'll bet you that I'm wrong because he'll drop down to like 6 or 7. But he is without a doubt, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback in my view. So I have him number 4. I also think he's going to have a better overall supporting cast this year. No, there's no Ty Warren, but if you guys know anything about the tight end depth chart at Penn State, they're going to be fine at tight end. They won't be Tyler Warren good, but they're going to be just fine. The receiving core is much improved. He's in year 2 of Andy Kotelnicki's offense, which also matters. This is the first time as a starter he gets to go into a season running the same offense. And anyone that knows what Mike Yurcich was doing compared to what Andy Kotelnicki was doing, that kid learned a dramatically different offense last year. Now he gets to repeat that in year 3. I think he's a good football player. So we'll see how that goes. And then he also has a really good supporting cast, good defense, good running game. I think Drew Aller's a good football player. Number 3 on my list is Arch Manning. Again, this is a projection list. Arch is another kind of an interesting player because I've said before that I think Arch gets a little bit too much hype and people act like he's like the greatest quarterback in the world. But I do think he's a very talented player. He's in a system that is going to be great for him. Look, I don't know, like Lincoln Riley has kind of taken a step back to me, and I'm kind of elevating Steve Sarkisian more into that number 1 quarterback developer role right now because of what he's done in recent seasons, going back to Mac Jones in 2020, and then obviously, I think he got a lot more out of Quinn Ewers than I think he should have got out of Quinn Ewers. I'm not a big Quinn Ewers fan, as you guys know. I think the thing that separates Arch is he's a smart kid, he's got a good arm, but he's going to add a running element to this offense that they lacked last year. I have some concerns about the offensive line, but he's going to have very good weapons. There's a lot of returning weapons. The run game will help protect him a little bit. His own running ability will protect him a little bit. I have Arch number 3. I think he's there on my list. I just think his combination of talent, the talent around him, the system he plays in, I think he's going to have a big year. And he just seems to be a kid that just kind of is able to drown out the noise. I worry a lot about the pressure getting to him, of all the hype getting to him. But he just seems to be the kind of kid that just doesn't seem to pay a lot of attention to that.
Sure.
And helps drown it out. And I think that's why he's going to be able to overcome some of the – I mean, guys, if to some people, if Arch Manning finishes the year as the 3rd best quarterback in the country, there will be some people that will be like, well, maybe he's not as good as I thought he was. Like, that's the crazy hype that's on Arch Manning. And I think it's unfair to the kid, but I still think he's a really good quarterback. And so I have him number 3 on my list. And they're going to need him to be that good because he's going to have to be more of a playmaker than Ewers was. There's no question about that. Number 2 on my list is Lenore Sellers. And I have kind of done not a 180 on the Lenore because I thought he's a good player, but I thought he was getting way too much hype. And he's especially getting too much hype from an NFL draft standpoint. I think he needs to show a lot more. But guys, when I look at Lenore Sellers the last season and you really start to study his game, I forgot to say something about Arch Manning. The reason I'm willing to project more with Arch than I am some other quarterbacks is because we've seen Arch play. I don't have CJ Carr on my list, although I think CJ Carr could end up in the top 10 because I've never seen CJ Carr throw a pass. Arch Manning threw for 939 yards and 9 touchdowns last year, and also rushed for over 100 yards and 4 more touchdowns. So it's not like this kid's never played. This kid also started 2 games last year. That's not a ton, but it's not like he's never played a meaningful down. And so I think that factors in as well. But to Lenore Sellers, there's a lot of picking his game apart. And a lot of the games where I saw Lenore Sellers play, like where I watched full games, were some of the early in the season games. I watched him play. I watched this film against LSU, and I thought he did some really dynamic things running the football, but he was a work in progress as a passer. I watched him against Ole Miss in a game where he really struggled throwing the football. I watched him against Alabama where he made some plays, but also showed, again, still a bit of a work in progress. And I watched the game against against Texas A&M, where he made some big-time throws down the field, but he completed less than 50% of his passes. This offseason, as I started breaking down some of his performances later in the year, you saw a kid that was starting to get a better feel of reading defenses. He was starting to make better decisions. He was starting to speed up some of his decision-making. He started making more plays out of in the pocket, which certainly impacted things for me. 2,500 yards passing, 8.5 per attempt, 65.6 completion yard rate, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks is not impressive. But when you look at his production, guys, he had 13 touchdown passes in his last 6 games. So much more productive as from a pass game production standpoint. And the last 6 games, he had 5 of his best 6 yards performances down the stretch as well in some crucial moments. And so A&M ends the season. I mean, South Carolina ends the season on a 6-0 stretch, and it coincides with Lenore Sellers really getting hot, playing his best football. On top of that, fellas, you add what he does on the ground. 674 yards. He had 2 games over 100 yards last year. Clemson did a pretty good job of really upsetting the South Carolina pass game last year. The South Carolina receivers were not getting open, and the pass rush against them was the O-line did not do a good job of protecting Lenore Sellers last year, and that stalled the offense. Was his least productive passing game of the second half of the year. So what does he do? He starts making plays with his legs. 16 carries, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had the game winner with about a minute left, Trev. He makes a great play on third. I think it was 3rd and 16. He takes off running and ends up scoring, or that might have been his first touchdown against them, but I think it was his second touchdown, and just has an excellent performance and leads them to a victory at Clemson. So I've come around when you consider redshirt freshman. He's got a lot of weapons coming back. Same system he gets to play in. He's a kid that has shown me a lot of maturity as a quarterback. He can make plays with his legs, and there's just some things he can do physically. You're just like watching him make plays that you're just like, I don't know that there's anybody else in college football. Not many people in college football can do that. Meaning like he's getting yanked down from behind, and it looks like he's going to go down, and he comes out of it, takes off running, and ends up throwing the ball down the field. Like there's just some things he can do where it's like there's no way he's getting out of the pocket there. Oh, never mind. Oh, there he goes. Okay. He's a playmaker. He's a big-time playmaker. But what he showed second half of the year is that he can also play within structure and rip you apart. And if he can build on that this year, guys, so like this is definitely a projection pick for me. If we're predicting right now who is the top 5 quarterbacks in the country right now, Lenore Sellers is not in my top 5, most likely. But I'm projecting what I think they'll be, then he went way up my list because I see him making that big year 2 starter jump. And that's what I expect we're going to see from Lenore Sellers, especially with what's around him. So my number 1 quarterback is CJ Carr. No, I'm kidding. It's Cade Klubnik from Clemson is my number 1 quarterback. Trev, I know we both have Cade number 1. I'm sorry, I'm giving away a little bit of too much there, but
yeah, but that's okay. You guys can both talk about him just like you did the Sam Levitt. You know what I mean? Because
the more I see Cade Klubnik, the more I liked what he did last year. One thing about Cade that I think gets underrated is I don't think people appreciate how good his arm is. There's throws he's made. He made a touchdown pass last year with a guy in his face where he threw the ball from like his own own 47, and his receiver caught it in the end zone. That's a 50-plus yard bomb with the dude in his face. And he made some plays in an offense where he had to he finally had some receivers around him. And once those young receivers started to get comfortable, he played better. Cade is not the kind of guy that's got the talent to take a average team, put them on his shoulders, and lead them to victory like Trevor Lawrence could, and Taj Boyd could do. I shouldn't say average because they had some good players too, but those guys could elevate in a way that I don't know that Cade can. But when you put some players around him and he got more experience last year, he became a far, far more effective player. And I also don't think he gets enough credit for what he does athletically. This is a kid that, like Lenore Sellers, does a great job of avoiding pressure, has really good escapability. He's not quite as dynamic of an athlete as Lenore's, but there's a lot of similarities. We talk about Lenore's walk-off against Clemson. Well, I think that the first touchdown that Clemson had that game was a Cade run. And also Cade had that long walk-off 50-plus yard touchdown against Pitt with like a minute left in the game where he took off running, made a guy miss in space, cut inside, and takes it to the house. You talked about how well Kevin Jennings played at the late in that game, but big part of what allowed Clemson to win that game is how well Cade played the whole game. 262 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also threw a lot of passes last year. That's the nature of the Clemson offense. So like you look at some of the numbers he had, 288 yards against Pitt. Yeah, but he threw 41 passes in that game. But he had 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's the nature of that offense. But then he also, rushes for 41 yards and has that long touchdown run at the end of the game to walk it off. So, he had 2 rushing touchdowns against South Carolina. made some absolutely brilliant. I mean, he diced up a Texas secondary that was one of the best pass defenses in college football last year. I mean, that Texas secondary last season, guys, was outstanding. I mean, you look at the postseason, I don't know that anyone played as well as he did. I mean, you could talk about, Will Howard threw for 289 yards, but he threw a lot of short passes. 70 of those yards and his only touchdown came on a screen pass at the end of the first half that Travion Henderson took 70 yards for a touchdown. I mean, Cade was carving Texas up in that game. And yes, his receivers made great catches, but he was putting the balls in spots where you're just like, dude, that's the Austin Westlake version of Cade Klubnik that we had as a 5-star. So I was really impressed with him. He's going to have talent around him. The run game is a little bit of a concern. The uncertainty of who's going to carry the ball. Everyone comes back in the offensive line. Everyone comes back a receiver. They'll have a new tight end. I think Cade Klubnik is a guy that has the highest floor of any quarterback in the country this season. He may not finish number 1, but he will finish in the top 5. And so I just think that because he looks kind of skinny and gangly, that people don't give enough credit to how well that kid throws the football and how far he can throw the football. And that's why Cade is where I'm at in my number 1 list. So your turn, Trev.
Yeah, look, man, as far as Cade Klubnik is concerned, you and I are on the same page. It's always weird to think that last season he passed for over 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. You would think because of the stigma around him, he was somewhere in like the 24 touchdown pass range, somewhere in like the 3,100 passing yard range. He was a good player last year, man. And
come on, Cade?
Yes.
He threw for 3,600 yards. Let's see here.
Yeah, 3,639.
3,639 yards, 36 touchdowns, 6 picks.
And he's going to be playing behind a really, really good offensive line this upcoming season as well. All of his main receivers come back. He's going to be playing behind an offensive line that had 3,889 snaps just in 2024. They have a combined 128 career starts. So the ingredients are there for him to have, repeat another type of season like this. I echo a lot of the same things that you do about Cade. He's my number 1 as well. Now,
all right, let's get to your.
We already talked about Sam Leavitt being my 5th. Okay. My number 4 quarterback is the Texas kid, Arch Manning. For a lot of the same reasons that Bryan talked about. Yes, he is relatively inexperienced when you start talking and comparing to him, the Cade Klubniks of the world, the Drew Allers of the world. But look, started 2 games last season, went 2-0 as a starter, played against Mississippi State and Louisiana Monroe, Bryan mentioned his stats earlier. 939 passing yards, 108 rushing yards, 13 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions last season. But he did also play in meaningful games. He was kind of their change of pace quarterback that they would bring in, have him, use his legs, pick up a 3rd down. He played in big moments last year. Now, again, in the same light, like I was talking about some quarterbacks earlier on my list, it is different when you're preparing as somebody that just kind of has a niche role in an offense and then preparing as a starter. But the kid grew up his entire life with his last name being Manning. I don't think that he really shies away from attention. I think that's just kind of something that comes with that territory.
And he went to Texas.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other schools he could have picked where the pressure would have been as great. So he picked one of the most pressure-packed quarterback positions on top of having the name. No
100%.
doubt about it.
100%. This is a kid that doesn't shy away from pressure, but it is a projection. And unfortunately, like we've talked about so many times on the show, if he is the 4th best quarterback in the country, there's going to be a lot of people that write him off after the season, which is not fair to a kid entering his first season as a full-time starter. But as of now, Arch Manning is still in my top 5 heading into this season. Offensive line is going to play a big role in some of his success this year because it is a completely different looking offensive line than what they had last year. I have something up on the message boards about that, just a championship contender overview with them. But if they are going to make another run, Arch Manning's going to be at the center of it, man. Now, my 3rd quarterback I know is going to just, for lack of better words, it's just going to piss some people off. It's Carson Beck at Miami. And yes, I understand. You guys know me. I'm not high on Miami this year, and I'm still sticking true to that. I am. But I look at who Carson Beck is as a player, and I look at what he brings to the table for this Miami team, we're talking about a quarterback that has only ever lost 2 schools. He lost to Ole Miss and Alabama twice. And it's weird to think about that. He has 27 career starts. He's 24-3 as a starter. 2 of his losses came to Alabama. 1 of them came to Ole Miss. Now, he's going into his 3rd year as a starter. He transferred to Miami in the offseason. If Miami is going to have the season that some people think that they are going to, it will be on the shoulders of Carson Beck. Yes, I like the offensive line that they bring back. Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, quality running backs, but they lost a lot of production from last season on offense. They lost their top 5 pass catchers. They are going to need an experienced quarterback like Carson Beck to help bring that group together. Now, we're talking about a guy who was throwing to receivers last year who led the nation in drops. Georgia's wide receivers had 31 drops last season, which led the nation kind of by a lot.
His opponents didn't drop a lot of his throws, though.
Didn't. But it comes into what confidence level do you have with throwing to the receivers when you are not 100% confident that they're going to catch it.
Screw it. I know this defender's going to catch it. I'm throwing it to him.
I guess, man. I need to switch up my list and have Lenore Sellers.
I'm just kidding, dude.
But
I'm totally kidding.
I know. I'm messing with you. But I look at what he brings to the table for Miami. And yes, Cam Ward, he was a number 1 overall draft pick. He did not have the game experience that Carson Beck has coming into Miami this season. I think Cam Ward is a better talent, but
he didn't have the Power 5 game experience.
Or just the big game experience in
big
general.
Game experience. Okay.
Yeah.
You said experience. I just thought you meant like overall. But yeah, big game experience, absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, Carson Beck, they lost to Alabama. He was a big reason why they came back in that game. Also part of the reason why they were down in that game. And so he needs to find somewhere and live in the middle, because he can't be he digressed as a passer in terms of turnover margin from 2023 to 2024. I don't know if that has to do with confidence in the receiving core. I don't know if that had to do with some sort of schematic change by Mike Bobo, but that's something that will have to get shored up. But like I said at the start of this, when I put a lot of weight into what these quarterbacks mean to their specific team's success. And I'm projecting a little bit here with Carson Beck. And it's weird to say that I'm projecting with somebody going into their 3rd season as a starting quarterback at the FBS level. But if he's somebody that, if Miami is the team that people think that they are, Carson Beck has the opportunity to prove me wrong / right because of where I have him on this list, because he will be a focal point of that. So I have him 3rd. My number 2 quarterback is Drew Aller. Again, like what Bryan said, I know people are just going to not like it. But when you look at the fact of the matter, he is a quarterback going into his 3rd year as a starter. He is 23-6 as a starting quarterback. Last season, he had 3,300 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. As much as people don't want to acknowledge it, that kid made some money throws in the postseason. Not against Notre Dame to their wide receivers, but some of the throws he had against Boise State were money throws that I hope to see in South Bend this upcoming fall. But to me, I'm projecting a little bit more to this is like the top of his ceiling. I think where Drew Aller leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths is that he was this highly touted guy that was supposed to come in and completely take over college football and lead Penn State to the promised land. All things considered, he almost did last season. And we can talk about all the different reasons why, they ran into Notre Dame. That is a big reason. Their path in the playoff wasn't as easy. Look, he lost 1 game in the regular season last year, took Penn State to their first Big Ten championship since 2016, won their first 2 postseason games. That holds weight to me, truly. And do I think he's going to go out this upcoming season and put up Joe Burrow numbers? No, but I think he's poised to have a better season than what he had last year because of the returning production coming back. A lot of people get hung up on the fact that Tyler Warren is no longer there. I understand. He was a very big part of their passing offense last season. It's warranted. But what they bring back this season, I like their additions in the transfer portal. I like Kyron Hudson coming in. I like Devontae Ross coming in. He was the more productive of the 2 from what he did at Troy. But I like their receiving core. He's going to be throwing behind an offensive line that is one of the best in the country. I mean, they had over 3,500 snaps in 2024. They have 65 career starts amongst all 5 of them. The signs are pointing in the right direction. And I'm kind of playing into what people perceive his potential to be here with Drew Aller at number 1 or at number 2. And then you guys know my number 1 is the same as Bryan's with Cade Klubnik.
I want to say one thing about Drew Aller also is everybody talks, well, the only team that Carson Beck's lost to is Notre Dame and Alabama. Well, I would argue that he played on a better team than Drew Aller played on, but Drew Aller's only losses are to Ohio State twice, Oregon, Notre Dame, Michigan when the year they won the title, and Ole Miss in a bowl game. Like, he hasn't exactly they haven't been upset either with him. They've won a lot of games. Also want to point out the reason Carson Beck is not on my list, there's 2 big reasons. One, brand new receiving core, but the biggest reason is I have major questions about his health.
Fair.
Which is also, talk about DJ Lagway, but I just think the fact that he's going to have a brand new team, brand new offense, brand new group of receivers that are just kind of solid, combined with the elbow injury, I couldn't put him on my list because is this guy going to be able to play a whole year? That was my reason for not having him on there. If he's healthy, he's at the bottom of my top 10. Most likely. But yeah.
Yeah, totally fair.
Can I ask you a question, Trevor?
Yeah, man.
If Carson Beck ends the season as the 3rd best quarterback in college football, is Miami finished in the top 25? This is where I'm having trouble with you not having Miami in the top 25, but having Carson Beck number 3 quarterback. Now, we've said the top 25 was a preseason top 25. This is a projection of the season, so it's 2 different things. So that's why I'm asking you this question. Is, just so we were clear, this isn't me challenging you. It's the preseason ranking is about where teams are now.
Yep.
This is a projection of what we think will happen during the season.
Yep.
If Drew Aller plays like the number 3, Carson Beck plays like number 3 quarterback in the country, where does Miami finish the season?
In the top 20. Okay. I would say. I don't think they make the playoffs. A lot of my pushback with Miami comes from people projecting them as a playoff team or as a preseason top 10 team. I will admit it was a little harsh to leave them completely out of my top 25, but looking at what they bring back outside of Carson Beck, I really just don't love. I mean, a complete secondary made up of all transfer portal people, all receiving core, all tied together with transfer portal players or unproven players. The reason why I put Carson Beck on my list where I did is I think because of his experience, what I'm projecting is because of his experience at inside big games, being the starting quarterback at Georgia under Kirby Smart for 2 seasons. I think his experience will help be able to bring them together a little bit more than maybe what I don't know, what you want to call it, a transfer portal kind of mercenary would in the portal. So that's the project. Now, when I say top 3, this is when it comes into what it means for their team. I don't think he's going to be putting up Heisman numbers like what a Lenore Sellers could, what a Cade Klubnik could. But if he can bring that team together, because their schedule is favorable, they don't leave the state of Florida until November.
Yeah.
And so if he is able to make it work, his performance on the, all things considered would put him up there for me. But I definitely get that's a totally valid question.
One of my concerns with Carson Beck also is people talk about the teams he's beat. If you go back and watch a lot of those games, I don't think he necessarily played all that great in a lot of those games. Like the Texas game, he's pretty bad against Texas.
Yep.
Both times. He didn't play very well. I mean, he played poorly against Ole Miss this year. The only good team he really played well against for 4 quarters is Tennessee. He owns Tennessee because he ripped them up this year and he ripped them up last year. I think his game against Tennessee last year might have been, or 2023 might have been the best game of his career. But, he was a big reason why they were down 28-0 Alabama. Then he throws for a bunch of yards, and then the game's on the line, and they're going for a game, game-winning drive at the end of that game, and he throws a pick in the end zone. Or game-tying drive, throws a pick in the end zone. He played terrible against Texas. Threw for 175 yards and 3 picks, no touchdowns. The defense won that game. And then he didn't play very well against Texas. He had 56 yards at halftime. So I just think he's a guy that's been a part of a good team. I just question how good he actually is in those moments. And he won't have that defense and that talent around him Doesn't have Brock Bowers to throw to, Ladd McConkey to throw to. To your point, when he had those guys and played a soft schedule, he looked like a great quarterback. When he didn't, now we got to make all these excuses on why he didn't look that good.
Sure.
And that's kind of my pushback. But you are correct. There aren't many quarterbacks that have played in more big games the last 2 years than Carson Beck. You've got the bullseye on your chest every time you take the field when you're at Georgia. So I will give him that. Let's talk about some of the other ones. So go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you guys talked at the top of the show about how, this is a projection. And so you guys are taking some liberties about what you think they're going to be doing this year and some things like that. And I know that you guys kind of shied away from first-year starters that don't have any kind of production, right? Mm-hmm. And so there were guys that I think you guys struggled with keeping off of your list. And so there's kind of an honorable mention, if you will. And so I want to give each of you guys an opportunity to talk about some guys that you really did contemplate putting on the list, but didn't, but guys you're going to be keeping your eye on who have the potential of jumping into that top 10, throughout the season.
Let's just kind of go one each, Trev.
Yeah.
I'll bring up one, you bring up one.
There you go.
I had a hard time leaving DJ Lagway off my list, but the reason why is there's twofold. Number one is like he's got to be a way better decision maker. You look at like the 2 picks he threw against Tulane. They were terrible interceptions. You're like, dude, you threw it right to a guy and you didn't see him. But the other thing is also, like with Carson Beck, I have major questions about his ability to stay healthy. He has a very unorthodox throwing motion. And when you start hearing about a kid having shoulder, elbow problems, he's got a funky, like high stress type of throwing motion that causes the ball to kind of come out funky at times. I'm really worried about his ability to stay healthy. And he showed me some things this year, but he also showed me he's still very much a work in progress. I think if DJ Lagway was a 3-star recruit that went to Florida and did exactly what he did last year, I don't know that the media is hyping him the way that he did. I think the highest you'll see him ranked is like where Trev has him, like round 8, because he did show some really good things on film last year. But there's people putting him as like the number 1 quarterback in the SEC and stuff like that. And you're like, hold on a second. And so that's something I want to see more of from him. But that was one of the tougher ones. But I just want to explain why he wasn't on my list is I'm concerned about the injuries, and he's got a lot. He's got to show me from a processing standpoint for he can be that. But if he ends the year in the top 10, won't be shocked at all. I just need to see more from him, and then he can stay healthy before I can have him on there.
Give me one of yours, Trevor. What do you got?
Blake Horvath was really hard for me to leave off of my list because of what he means for Navy, because he fits a lot of the criteria that I evaluated this on, what he means to the team, the impact of when he's on versus off the field. This probably isn't the most fair way to look at this. I'll be the first person to admit that. But when I look at Navy and Blake Horvath as a whole, if he's on and he's firing, I know I love the fact that they beat Oklahoma in a bowl game last year. But a lot of the other quarterbacks, if they're on and they play up to that level, they're able to compete and potentially beat playoff teams. Navy and Blake Horvath, if he plays to his full potential, I don't think they have the ability to beat a playoff team. I mean, he rushed for 129 yards and a touchdown against Notre Dame last year, and Notre Dame won 51-14. Again, there is a wide margin between Notre Dame, who played for the national championship, and 6-6 Oklahoma. That is also fair to say. I get that. But that is, right or wrong, the group of 5 aspect is kind of what played a little bit into Blake Horvath not making my list. But what was hard is because my criteria was what you mean to your team, what it's like on and off the field. And Blake Horvath 100% fits that bill. I had a very, very hard time with him.
Dylan Raiola was one for me, Trev, I had on my list initially. Him and Avery Johnson are 2 guys that I had on my list initially that I just had to bump down because I just felt other guys. It's more about the floor for a couple other guys was just better for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I left those 2 guys off my list. I think especially Dylan Raiola, it's kind of the opposite for me with you and Carson Beck. I have Nebraska higher, but I don't have Dylan Raiola in my top 10. If they're going to be the team that I think they can be, he's going to have to be a key component, and then he will jump into my top 10. So of all the guys on here that played last year, that I think could make me look not smart for having him on there. He's in my top 2 or 3 of guys. Kevin Jennings, another one. I'm just not as high on Kevin Jennings as others are. I get everything you're saying. Statistically, you are correct. The success his team had last year, you are correct. I don't know what it is. I didn't think he played great against Clemson. I know he made some big throws late, but he was the reason they fell behind. And he just looked against Penn State like a kid who didn't belong on that field.
Yeah.
Like just in that moment. And you nailed that. I mean, you called that the ACC title game and, can they really play on that stage? And when he got on the biggest stage, I mean, you're driving down the field and you've got a chance to match a Penn State score and you throw a ball on 4th down that you're like, what are you doing? Where you should have run it. And then there's another drive where they're about to score and make it a game again. And he just throws the ball right to a defender. Like he didn't even see the guy. That concerned me for a guy that had as much experience as he has. But when he's on, he's a top. He looks like a top 10 quarterback. Those are a few other guys. I got some more, but those are a few other guys that I had a hard time not putting on my list. There's a couple of other guys I want to talk about that could end up on the top 10, but they weren't guys that I considered putting on the top 10 now. But those are the ones that I looked at, Trev, that I said, okay, I'm having a tough time keeping this guy off. I just think there's better players. Were there any others that were like right there for you?
Right there, no. You mentioned Avery Johnson. I had a tough time with John Mateer because you mentioned it when you talked about him. He's essentially coming from the group of 5 level. And to stay consistent.
Washington State was, for all intents and purposes, a G5 team last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in a tough spot.
And evaluating him the same way that I did Blake Horvath questions about the group of 5.
Or even Cam Ward, who spent 2 years at Washington State, but that was against a Pac-12 schedule where they were literally playing 9 to 10 Power 5 teams a year. He played 3 last year, including another team in Oregon State that was not really a Power 5 team anymore.
The only other quarterback that I kind of danced around with for a second was Luke Altmaier at Illinois.
Yeah.
But he was someone for me where it's like, did we kind of just see his ceiling last year with how good Illinois was? Maybe. But he's someone that it was more so the people ahead of him than it was like him specifically.
He's the perfect quarterback for Illinois, Trev. He's just he's not a guy that's going to go somewhere else and elevate them. He's the perfect guy for them.
Yep.
That's what he is. Vince, I also wanted to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we got kind of one more sub list. Is that what you want to talk about?
It's just the guys that I didn't consider for this top 10 list,
right? That
have the potential to be on this list at the end of the year, but I just don't think warranted consideration for now
because they're first year guys, right?
Or they're younger, raw guys. Yeah. There's just a lot more projection with them than some others. But I've got 5 guys that I look at and say, these guys could all blow up the list by the end of the year. And they're all first or second year players. Well, except for one. I've talked a lot about Aiden Childs in Michigan State. He's the least likely on this list to be there, but he's a guy that I just think guys has loads of tools.
I kind of like him though, man.
Loads of tools.
He obviously moved over from Oregon State, right? And he was at Michigan State last year. A lot of growing pains last year.
A lot of growing pains.
Made a lot of plays, but then made a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
And so I don't know why, but I like
when
this
he's
kid.
on, he looks really good. Yeah. And then he can make some other throws. You're like, that guy's got a long way to go.
Yeah, %. So he's feast or famine, boom or bust, whatever you want to use. But I do kind of like him.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. I'm with you.
But I didn't even consider him for this list.
No. I agree with that.
Consider him, but
I agree with that.
I could see him kind of having that breakout year where you're like, dude, you should have maybe gone
back.
Has
a full year under his belt. Like he's got a chance, and it's his second year at Michigan State. So yeah, I agree with you.
Here's another one of my favorites, guys. I love this kid. He's got a ways to go, but I could see him having a big time breakout year. Trev, I've talked about this kid a lot this offseason. It's CJ Bailey at NC State. Love this kid as a true freshman last year. Obviously had to replace Grayson McCall, who got injured and just wasn't effective. He ended up throwing for 2,413 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 picks. He ran for 279 yards and 5 more touchdowns as a true freshman. I mean, you could argue his numbers as a true freshman were more impressive than Dylan Raiola's as a true freshman. I just think there's a different pressure on him than there was Dylan Raiola because he didn't start the season as the starter. By the time he steps into the starting lineup, they've already been blown out once. or actually blown out twice, because I think he came off he didn't start against Clemson, right, Trev? Isn't that one of the games where Grayson McCall got hurt? I thought Grayson McCall was out that game, so I'm incorrect. But I just felt like he's a guy that in year 2 could make a big jump, but there's just a long way to go. Plus, you lost, Kevin Concepcion. Your offensive line's getting a little bit reworked, but I love CJ Bailey. Love that kid. Damond Williams from Washington is another guy on my list. He just doesn't have enough experience as a quarterback for me to put him on there, where he's got to be the guy. He played a lot last year. Started, I think the last 2 games he started for Washington? I think it was the last 2 games he started when they made the move to him. I don't remember if Will Rogers was hurt, and I thought he performed very well. He was great in the bowl game against Louisville, but that's kind of 2 games. He was a very dynamic runner. He's a kid that is going to have a shot to be a playmaker. I just want to see him handle the pressure of being the guy. But if the way he played against Louisville is any indication of what that kid is going to be, and I thought he battled his butt off against Oregon, but they got blown out that game. But he played great against Louisville. Dante Moore from Oregon is another guy that could easily jump on this list by the end of the year. I need to see how Dante handles the pressure of being a starting quarterback. That's a big concern I have. That kid throws a gorgeous football. He's a talented quarterback. He's going to have good, unproven, but still good weapons around him. And Will Stein is a heck of an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I just want to see that Will Stein can design an offense for a quarterback who can't run or doesn't run. That's my big fear with Dante at Oregon is, can Will Stein adjust his play calling and coaching style to not ask Dante Moore to run the way that Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix did? That's my big question. But I can easily see Dante on that list. And my last guy, CJ Carr from Notre Dame. I cannot, in good faith, and have a guy that's never thrown a pass in college be on my top 10 list. I don't care how talented he is. I've got to see it. And he's never thrown a pass in college. He played 1 game and he came and handed the ball off, and that's all he's ever done. So I couldn't be there. But guys, if Notre Dame's going to be the team that we think they're going to be, and CJ Carr's the starting quarterback, I think CJ is going to end the season as potentially being in this conversation, but I just couldn't project it without having seen him play. Will I be shocked if by the end of the year CJ Carr is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football? No, I won't. And that's what made this so hard, because I look at this and say, boy, there's a lot of dudes on here that you could throw Julian Sayin in there. Andrew Gilmore just brought up Julian Sayin. I think Julian Sayin is going to produce this year, but I don't know that he'll be the driver of the production. It's going to be the system and the players around him. I'm not as high on Julian Sayin as others, but he's going to put up numbers if he's the starting quarterback at Ohio State. I just don't know that he's on the level of these guys as a player. That's just my opinion. I didn't view him as a 5-star. You could add him to that list from a production standpoint, but guys, I could see the top 10. Like, I'm comfortable with this top 10. I don't feel a lot of conflicted about it, but in no year have I ever thought that. It won't shock me, though, if by the end of the year, over half these guys in my current top 10 are not in my postseason top 10.
Agreed.
Because of guys like Dylan Raiola and CJ Carr, Damond Williams, CJ Bailey, Aiden Childs. Does Noah Fafita have a bounce back year at Arizona? He's another guy to kind of keep in mind. If Julian Sayin goes out there and puts up monster numbers, this is one of those years. Dante Moore, this is one of those years where I'm comfortable with my list, because my list is a lot about floor as well as some ceiling. But there's a lot of guys with low floors but really high ceilings that could blow this list up. And so don't be shocked if at the end of the year, Trev and I are putting out top 10 lists that don't look anything like our preseason top 10 lists. Even though our preseason top 10 lists are projections, there's still some guys that could blow this thing up. And that's what I think made it really hard, because there's some like, dude, I can't justify putting him on the list right now. But, man, I think this kid's going to make me look stupid for not having him on my list at the end of the year. Yeah. And CJ Carr's one of them.
But I think that's the fun of it, though, right, Trevor? I mean, that's the fun of this list, because there is so much parity. Is that the right word? At the quarterback position for this season coming up? I mean, you don't have those entrenched starters that have just proven track records and all of that. You just don't have a bunch of those guys. And so that's why your guys is like 5 through 10. It's just kind of a jumble because you just don't know what that's going to be. And you guys you did the best, you pled your cases, made the best case scenarios for a lot of these guys, and it makes a lot of sense. But who knows what that's going to look like at the end of the year. Trevor, did you have anybody that you wanted to throw on here that Bryan didn't? I thought you might.
Yeah. Or if you want to expand on a couple of those guys too that you might like as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One, Vince, I think you hit the nail on the head. The one thing that's so difficult about this list is I think you could argue the majority of the highest ceiling players, quarterbacks in college football, aren't in our top 10 lists. The CJ Carrs.
High ceiling?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's what's going to make this season so interesting. Because the people at the top of my list are guys that are second year, third year starters, going on their second school. They have over X amount of wins, yada, yada, yada. A couple of the players that I had not a hard time leaving off this list. I had an easy time leaving them off this list, but could make me look a little dumb at the end of the season. One of them is Eli Holstein at Pitt. I'm really high on him. He is one of very few quarterbacks that started out last season throwing for 3 touchdown passes in 5 consecutive games. He started out the season with 15 touchdown passes and 1 pick. Health is going to be a big question for me if he can stay healthy, because we've seen what Pitt looks like when he's healthy. Mm-hmm. They started out the season 7-0. He wasn't healthy to finish the season, and they lost 6 straight games. So you have this dichotomy of 2 completely different seasons wrapped up into one of them with a healthy Eli Holstein, the other one without one. What's 2025 have in store for him? Another quarterback that I'm keeping my eye on, I don't know if he's going to crack the top 10, but somebody I'm keeping my eye on is Marcel Reed at Texas A&M, another polarizing player. But Colin Klein's going into year 2. The offensive personnel that they have this year, I think, fits more of what Klein wants to do down in College Station. Different looking receiving core. You now have fast players good with the ball in their hands. Like, you don't have 6'6" Noah Thomas. You have a bunch of scat guys. You combine that with his playmaking ability, I think that's interesting. And then, of course, I have CJ Carr on my list. Like Bryan said, don't want to rehash that. Same thing with Julian Sain. Julian Sain could accidentally throw for 3,800 yards this season because he's throwing to Jeremiah Smith.
That doesn't make him – like Archer's thing was, how do you not have Julian Sain in there? He's got the best receiving core in college football. That doesn't mean he's good. That means he's going to put up numbers. And I like Julian Sain. He's a good player. I just don't think he's an elite talent. I think he's a good talent that will put up good numbers because of the system he's in and the talent he has around him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you're an elite quarterback. I mean, Sawyer Robertson put up really big numbers last year at Baylor. I never considered him in the top 10.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just, Billy Edwards put up a lot of numbers last year at Maryland. I never considered him for the top 10. So sure. it goes a lot further than that. It goes a lot further than that. This is going to be a fun year because you guys said it. I would argue that the best talent at quarterback in the 2025 season are going to be guys in year 1 and year 2 of being in college. Like,
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
Like, it's just physically gifted players.
Yeah.
Like, with all due respect, I love Cade Klubnik. I think he gets underrated for his talent, but he doesn't have the talent of some CJ Carr and some of these guys, in my opinion. He's a very underrated player, but like, these guys have way higher ceilings.
Yeah.
But Josh Hoover couldn't sniff CJ Carr from just a raw talent standpoint. Same thing with CJ Bailey and he doesn't have talent of Julian Sain and some of those guys. So Damon Williams, Aiden Childs, he's just a really good college quarterback right now. And that's why I think this list could get blown up, in my opinion, guys, because there's just a lot of those second-year players, first-year starters that could be in there. I don't have Bryce Underwood in there. I'm not putting any freshmen on this list. And I don't even know that Bryce Underwood's going to start at the beginning of the season. Like, he'll eventually start, but like if Michigan's smart, they don't need to rush him. Take some of the pressure off. Let Mikey Keene maybe start the Oklahoma game, and then bring Bryce off the bench. If I was Michigan, I would do with Bryce Underwood exactly what Clemson did with Trevor Lawrence in 2018.
Sure.
And that is play him in each game, but have him come in and play a series here and there. And then when you think he's ready, then you get him in there. So there's a lot of guys that I like, guys, but I could mention a lot of other quarterbacks that I think are good. Somebody brought up Fernando Mendoza. Andrew Gilmore brought up the Dampier kid from Utah. those guys are really good college quarterbacks. There's a lot of this. This is going to be a fun year of watching football, guys, because Rocco Beck, Taylon Green, Diego Pavia, who does not belong in a top 10 quarterback conversation. And I would simply argue, go look at what he did the second half of the year when people got more film on him, and you'll understand why I don't have him in my top 10. But he's still a good quarterback. There's Kevin Jennings is in my top 10. There's a lot of guys coming back. Did I mention Taylon Green? Gio Lopez at North Carolina is one of my under-the-radar transfer portal pickups this season. I just don't know about the talent around him. It's actually, I think, going to be a really fun year of watching quarterbacks. We didn't bring up the Maddox Madsen kid who went to the playoffs last year, at Boise State. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the country, but these are the guys that we talked about that are the cream of the crop, either in production or talent, and that's what separates the guys that are good college quarterbacks from the guys we're talking about for a top 10 quarterback list. And I think it's going to be a fun year. I think next year, a lot of the guys we talked about at the end of our show are the guys we're going to be talking about at the beginning of our show. There's going to be a change. There's going to be a changing of the guard at some point in time this season, where we're going to see that. Okay, it's time now that these guys are taking over.
Mm-hmm.
But even on our list, there's young guys. Sam Levitt's a third, redshirt sophomore. Arch Manning's a redshirt sophomore. I mean, there's DJ Lagway's a sophomore. There's even some still young guys on the list, and there's even more that are going to be. Ooh, boy, yeah, it's going to be a fun year.
Yeah,
it's going to be a fun year,
and that's the bottom line. This is going to be a fun year, and we're going to do more things like this in the college football world moving forward throughout the summer. So make sure you guys stay tuned, and you also want to check out our other channel. Just going to throw that out there, CFB Nation. You want to check that out?
This breakdown will go up on our CFB Nation podcast and video as well.
Yeah, so you want to check that out if you guys want more college football related material to watch and hang on to. You want to go and subscribe to that channel and check out what we've got going on over there. And again, it's also we have a CFB Nation podcast channel as well, so you want to get over there and subscribe to that too. So definitely want to check that out. All part of the Irish Breakdown world. IB Nation. Okay, so you want to check all that out. We've got all kinds of good stuff to show you. So thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. And, of course, the boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's our premium message board. It's where you get all the intel, all the good stuff. That's where you want to get it from. So definitely check that out. It's the best money you can buy in the area. And no, I am not biased in any way, shape, or form. You want to check that out. boards.irishbreakdown.com. And again, I always like to bring it up.
Just because you're biased doesn't mean you're not wrong. I mean, you can be biased and right at the same time.
That's a great point. That's a fantastic point. You are so right on that one. And then obviously check out irishbreakdown.com for a bunch of written content as well. Class impact on certain guys committing and all of those fun stuff. So you want to check that out. Trevor and Bryan are always busy pumping out content for irishbreakdown.com as well. So premium message boards, irishbreakdown.com. Hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast channel. All of it. Hit that notification bell. There could be shows coming up in the evening.
There's going to be some imprompu shows coming up in the next couple weeks.
Could be a few. Just throwing it out there. So really appreciate you guys hanging out.
We're gonna have some 3-show days coming up the next couple weeks.
Right. So definitely check that out. We're working overtime, but we love doing it for all of you guys. So thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. For Bryan and Trevor, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.